the final discard, he left me with nothing, then I won everything. Part 1. The Anatomy of a Puppet Master. They say the human brain is wired to remember pain more vividly than pleasure. It's a survival mechanism, a way for our ancestors to remember which berries were poisonous or which cave held the predator. But for me, the memories of the last 10 years aren't just a warning, they are a map of a war zone. To understand the end of my story, you have to understand the beginning. I met Jamal at a charity gala. I was 24, a junior architect with a portfolio full of dreams and a heart that had never been truly broken. Jamal was 31, radiating an energy that felt like sunlight. He was ambitious, or so he said. He spoke of real estate empires and legacy. He looked at me as if I were the only person in a room of 500. That's the hook. Narcissists don't pick people they can't use. They pick the brightest lights so they can feel the warmth before they blow them out. Our first 3 years were a whirlwind of what I now know was love bombing. He moved fast. He wanted marriage within 6 months. He wanted to merge our bank accounts. He wanted to be the center of my universe. And I, caught in the high of being chosen by a man so powerful, led him. The first discard happened on our 3rd anniversary. I had planned a surprise dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. I waited for 3 hours. He never showed. When I got home, the house was dark. His closet was empty. The only thing left was a note on the kitchen island sitting next to a cold, half-empty cup of coffee. I can't do this anymore, Bethany. You're too demanding. You're stifling my soul. I need to find myself. I spent 48 hours on the floor of that kitchen. I didn't eat. I didn't move. I went through every conversation we'd had in the last month, searching for the mistake I must have made. That's the brilliance of the narcissist. They make their departure your fault. I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. I was a ghost at my own job. Then just as I was beginning to breathe again, he returned. It was 3 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. He was on the porch, sobbing. He said he'd had a vision of our future. He said the world was cold without me. He called me his anchor. And because I was starving for the man I thought he was, I let the monster back into the house. Part 2. The years of erosion. The middle years were the erosion phase. This is where the narcissist slowly sands down your edges until you fit into the tiny box they've built for you. Jamal's ambitions turned out to be a series of get-rich-quick schemes that I was expected to fund. He'd quit a job because a boss didn't respect his genius, and I would pick up a 3rd shift at the local diner to make sure the mortgage was paid. The physical abuse didn't arrive like a thunderstorm, it arrived like a rising tide. It started with the grip. He would grab my arm during an argument just a little too tight, his eyes burning with a cold, terrifying light. You aren't listening to me, Bethany. I'm trying to lead this family and you're being a hurdle. I would wake up with thumb-sized bruises on my bicep. When I asked about them, he would laugh. You must have bumped into the door frame again. You're so clumsy, Beth. It's honestly worrying. The 2nd discard happened in year 6. This time it wasn't a note, it was a ghosting. He went to the store for milk and didn't come back for 4 months. I found out later through a mutual friend, one he hadn't yet turned against me, that he was living with a 22-year-old yoga instructor in the next county. He only came back when she realized he was a penniless grifter and called the police to have him removed from her apartment. I should have changed the locks. I should have filed then. But the trauma bond is a powerful drug. It creates a chemical addiction to the cycle of pain and relief. When he came back, the relief phase felt like heaven, even if the pain phase was hell. By year 9, I was a shell of a human being. I had stopped seeing my friends because Jamal made them feel uncomfortable. I had stopped talking to my parents because he convinced me they were judging our marriage. I was alone in a house that felt like a tomb. He had started using his belt. Not often, just enough to keep me in a state of hypervigilance. I lived my life scanning his face for the slightest change in weather. If his jaw was tight, I was silent. If his eyes were hooded, I was invisible. I had mastered the art of being a ghost in my own life. Part 3. The night the mirror broke. Every victim has a snap point. It's the moment where the lies of the abuser stop working, and the reality of the situation becomes so sharp it cuts through the fog. For me, it was a Tuesday night in November. Jamal had come home in a grand state. He'd bought a vintage gold watch. It was beautiful, heavy, and cost exactly $18,000, the amount we had saved to finally pay off the back taxes on our home. It's an investment, Bethany, he said, admiring his wrist in the hallway mirror. To make money, you have to look like money. Jamal, we're going to lose the house, I said. My voice was small, but it was there. We can't afford a watch. We can barely afford the heat. He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He simply turned around and looked at me. That was the first time I saw it. The narcissistic rage. It's not anger. It's a total loss of humanity. To him, I wasn't a wife expressing a valid concern. I was a broken tool that had dared to spark. The beating that followed was the worst of my life. He didn't hit my face. He was too smart for that. He targeted my ribs, my back, my legs. As I lay on the cold linoleum of the kitchen floor, smelling the faint scent of the lemon cleaner I'd used earlier that day, I watched him go to the fridge. He poured a glass of orange juice. He took a sip. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, the same hand that had just been knotted into a fist. "Clean yourself up," he said, his voice as casual as if he were commenting on the weather. "You're making a mess of the floor." In that moment, the mirror didn't just crack, it shattered. The man I had loved, the man I had protected, didn't exist. He had never existed. He was a mask worn by a predator. I waited until I heard the rhythmic, heavy snoring of his post-violent sleep. I didn't pack a bag. I grabbed my purse, my car keys, and the folder of legal documents I had hidden in the back of the pantry months ago. I drove to the hospital. I sat in the ER parking lot for an hour, shaking so hard the car was vibrating. I went in. I told the truth. I let them take photos. I let them document the investments Jamal had made in my body. I filed for divorce the next morning. When the server handed Jamal the papers at his networking lunch, he didn't feel shame. He felt insulted. He called me 52 times in 3 hours. When I didn't answer, he sent a text that I still have saved today. "You think you're brave, Bethany? You're a secretary with $400 in your name. I gave you a life. Without me, you are a bug on a windshield. I'm going to enjoy watching the world crush you." Part 4. The Legal Theater of Cruelty. If you want to see a narcissist's true face, take them to court. The divorce proceedings lasted 10 months. It was 10 months of pure, unadulterated psychological torture. Jamal hired a lawyer who was just like him, a silver-tongued shark who specialized in character assassination. In the mediation room, Jamal sat across from me, wearing the very watch that had cost us our home. He smirked every time I spoke. He rolled his eyes when my lawyer presented the medical photos. "She's a high-functioning alcoholic, Your Honor," Jamal told the mediator with a sigh of mock tragedy. "She falls down the stairs constantly. I've spent 10 years trying to protect her from herself. These injuries are the result of her own instability. I'm the victim here." He turned our friends against me. He told them I had been cheating on him for years. He told them I was the one who blew the money on secret addictions. One by one, the people I thought were my community drifted away. They didn't want to get involved in messy drama. They believed the man who looked put together over the woman who looked like she hadn't slept in a year. He took everything. Because I had used my income to pay the bills while he invested our savings into accounts I couldn't track, he made it look like I had nothing. He got the house, he got the car, he even fought for my grandmother's heirloom dining set. Not because he wanted it, but because he knew it was the only thing I had left of my family. On the day the divorce was finalized, I walked out of that courthouse with a rusted sedan, 2 suitcases of clothes, and a court order stating I was entitled to exactly $0 in alimony because of my admitted history of unstable behavior. Jamal caught up to me on the courthouse steps. "Enjoy the gutter, Bethany," he whispered, leaning in close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. "Look at you. You're 35, you're broke, and you're alone. You'll be begging me for a place to stay by Christmas, and I'll make sure the answer is no." Part 5. The $754 million miracle. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the universe to decide that enough was enough. It was a Tuesday. It's always a Tuesday. I was coming home from a double shift at the diner. My feet were throbbing. My back felt like it was being scorched, and I had $40 left in my budget for the week. I stopped at a gas station to put $10 in my tank. On a whim, maybe a subconscious desire to gamble on a life that had already lost everything, I reached into my pocket. "Give me a Powerball ticket," I said. "Quick pick." I shoved the ticket into my purse and forgot about it. I went home, ate a bowl of cereal, and fell asleep with my shoes on. The next morning, the diner was electric. People were huddled around the small TV in the corner. "The winning ticket was sold right here in our zip code," the news anchor was saying. "A single winner, $754 million. I felt a strange cold prickle at the back of my neck. I went to my locker. I pulled out my purse. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the paper. 04, 12, 21, 34, 59, and the Powerball 08. I looked at the ticket. I looked at the screen. I looked back at the ticket. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I walked into the walk-in freezer, closed the door, and I sat down on a crate of frozen fries. I stayed there for 20 minutes in the biting cold, just breathing. The silence of the freezer was the first peace I had known in 10 years. I didn't tell a soul. I worked the rest of my shift. I spent the next month in a state of silent war. I hired a legal team from out of state, the kind of lawyers who charge $1,000 an hour and don't take no for an answer. I claimed the prize through a blind trust. I didn't want the fame. I wanted the leverage. Part 6, The Architect Reborn. People ask me if I would spend the money on cars or jewelry, but the first thing I did with my millions wasn't for vanity. It was for my soul. I bought back the architectural firm that had let me go when Jamal's drama became too much for their professional image. I didn't fire anyone. I simply walked into the boardroom, sat at the head of the table, and laid out a set of blueprints I had been drawing in the dark of my studio apartment. It was the design for the Meridian Center. For years, Jamal had mocked my drawings. He called my designs utilitarian trash and uninspired. He told me I didn't have the vision to be a real architect. But as the steel beams of the Meridian Center began to rise in the heart of the city, the world disagreed. The building was a marvel of glass and light, designed to house both corporate offices and a state-of-the-art trauma recovery wing. It was the first living building in the state, powered by the sun and cooled by rain. On the day of the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I stood on the stage in a tailored suit, looking out at a crowd of thousands. I saw my old boss. I saw the people who had turned their backs on me. And then in the very back of the crowd, I saw a familiar face. It was Jamal. He was wearing the same suit he'd worn to our divorce hearing, now frayed at the cuffs. He was trying to push his way to the front, trying to shout that he was the inspiration for my success. He actually had the nerve to wave at me, flashing that old, manipulative smile. I didn't wave back. I didn't even acknowledge him. I looked directly into the news cameras and said, "This building stands as proof that you can take everything from a person, their money, their home, their reputation, but you can never take their talent. You can never take the light they were born with." The security guards quietly moved him to the back of the line. He wasn't a shark anymore. He was just a ghost in a cheap suit, watching me build the world he said I wasn't good enough to inhabit. Part 7, The Final Confrontation and the Hoovering. The Hoovering reached a fever pitch after the Meridian Center opened. Jamal began sending legal letters, claiming that since the designs were conceived while we were married, he was entitled to a creativity royalty. My lawyers didn't just reject him, they buried him. We countersued for the $200,000 he had hidden in his mother's name. We brought in forensic accountants who tracked every cent he had siphoned from my paycheck over a decade. He lost everything. His mother's house was seized to pay the judgment. He was forced into a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a noisy bar, the very kind of gutter he had promised me. But the final, most dramatic moment came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was leaving the foundation office when I saw him leaning against my car. He looked terrible, skin sallow, eyes bloodshot. The arrogance finally replaced by a desperate, hollow hunger. "Bethany," he croaked, stepping toward me. "Please, I'm sorry. I was sick. I was under so much pressure. You're a Christian woman, right? You believe in forgiveness. I just need a chance to prove I've changed. Just $50,000, Beth. That's all I need to get back on my feet, for old time's sake." I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I didn't even feel anger. I felt a profound, cold indifference. "Jamal," I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "You asked me if I believed in forgiveness. I do. I've forgiven myself for ever believing you were worth my time. But I don't owe you a chance. I gave you 10 years of chances, and you used every single one to try and kill the person I was." I reached into my bag and pulled out a single crumpled $20 bill. I dropped it on the wet pavement at his feet. "That's for the Powerball ticket," I said. "Consider us even." I got into the car, and as my driver pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I watched him scramble to pick the wet bill up out of the gutter. He was exactly where he told me I would be. Part 8, The View from the Top. I am sitting on the terrace of my home now. The sky is turning a deep, bruised purple as the sun dips below the ocean. I am no longer the woman who flinches at a slammed door. I am no longer the woman who hides her bruises with makeup. I am the architect of my own life, and the foundation I've built is unbreakable. Through the Phoenix Foundation, we have helped over 5,000 women find their own Tuesday miracle. Not all of them win the lottery, but they win something better, their dignity. They win the right to breathe without permission. Jamal is a memory now, a dark chapter in a very long, very beautiful book. He discarded me because he thought I was nothing. He didn't realize that by throwing me away, he was removing the only thing that was holding me back. If you are listening to this and you feel like you are in the gutter he built for you, look up. The sky is bigger than his ego. You are more than his insults. You are the architect of your own life. And sometimes the best way to win is to let the trash take itself out. Thanks for listening. If you've survived a discard, share your story in the comments. Let the world know that you're still here. And remember, you are the prize, always. Join us again every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday for a new story. Thank you for supporting me, and I love you. Palmer.